The double-sided printed flyer is a compact, cost-effective marketing tool that provides space for detailed information on both sides, making it perfect for promoting an exhibition event. As part of a brand campaign, a flyer allows you to engage your audience with key event details like dates, location, and highlights while showcasing your brand's visual and messaging. The double-sided format offers more room for creative design and content, maximizing the impact of your promotion. The flyer is an important tool for driving awareness, distributing information effectively, and reinforcing a brand's presence. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to design a professional flyer from scratch using some simple yet powerful tools in InDesign. We'll cover setting up your document, adding text, images, and even some design flair. So here I am in InDesign, and here is a flyer that we are going to develop in this video. This design is part of a series of branded marketing material we'll be creating on this course for a fictional design exhibition event. To create this flyer in InDesign, we're going to cover the following key steps. This is a methodical process that will ensure we create quality design in InDesign and not leave anything unchecked. So be sure to check the bookmarks in this video so you can jump back or ahead at any time. After this video, you'll be able to create a flyer in Adobe InDesign super easy. So let's get into it. So up to this point in the course, we have created some fairly simple publications with light content. In previous videos, we created a business card, a letterhead, we generated digital artwork, and created a poster design. Now the flyer may also seem like a simple format. However, as flyers tend to include a lot of information, this is where things can start to get a bit more complex when dealing with and managing the format of lots of visual elements. The goal when creating a flyer is to manage all the content in a way that makes it clear and easy to comprehend, digest quickly, and leave a lasting impression. As I scroll down, you can see I have 3 flyer versions with the front and back covers next to each other. Here, the structure of each flyer design is the same. However, in each version, there is a different cover artwork and messaging. If we look in the Pages panel, we can see the contents of this document and how many pages are contained. When creating a flyer, it's common to work like this, where you may focus on a few flyer designs in one document. For this project, we're creating a leaflet for a fictional design expo. For the look and feel, we're going to take reference from the brand media kit that is included as part of this course, where we will be including some of the brand motif and color elements as part of the design. We'll also be using some of the design elements we have already developed previously in this course. If you want to take a look at this document and get all the assets and follow along, you can get access to this document from the course download folder. This download folder comes with multiple projects and a ton of assets and resources we will be using in this course. You can find the link to acquire the folder from the description. With the download folder open, click into folder 4 project, into the design expo folder, click into folder 2 event publication design, and open the event design InDesign file. This is a document that contains all the publication design we'll be creating for this course. If we scroll down to the marketing collateral page, we can see a variety of documents. For this video, we are going to look at the flyer document. So with the selection tool, I'll select the flyer thumbnail. Now I'll either come to the links panel and click Edit Original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail, and the document will open up in its own tab. Now for this document, I'm using the font Base New. If you have not already downloaded all the fonts for this course, this is a free font that you can acquire online. To get this font, I would recommend you check out the course fonts page on the course PDF document. This is a list of all the fonts that are used in this class and where to get them. Simply click on the Base New link, and this will take you straight to where you can download it. Simply close this document, install the fonts, open it back up again, and you should be able to follow along just fine. So on the first page, we have a fairly straightforward layout where it's mainly visual to give a good first impression. Here we have a strong header to capture the attention. At the bottom, we have date and location details, and we also have this little call-out tab at the top. On the second page, things are a little busier, where we are managing lots of visual information to give more details about the event itself. Here we have more text, images with a more complex layout. If I press W to toggle between preview and normal mode, in normal mode we can see that there's quite a few things going on here behind the scenes. To help structure and align my elements, I have used a baseline grid and a 4-column grid which fits inside the margin grid around the inside. If we look over in the layers panel, we can see 3 layers. one for type, one for images, and one for base grid. So these flyers include a lot of visual elements, and the layers have been set up this way to make it easy to organize and manage them. And if we look at the character and paragraph styles panel, we have some styles here formatting our text, and we also have some in the object styles panel. So let's see how we can create a document like this. So to begin, I'm going to come up to File, New, and create a new document. Now when creating a new document in InDesign, you can choose from a range of presets. For this flyer, I'm going to go with an A5 sheet, so I'll click the Print tab and choose A5. Over in the parameters, I'll set the units to millimeters. I'll make sure the orientation is set to portrait. I don't want facing pages, so I'll make sure this is unchecked. I'm going to set the pages to 2. For the margin space, I'll check to unlock the parameters across them all. I'll set the top to 10mm, the bottom to 7mm, left to 15 and right to 15. I'll click down on my bleed and slug and type in 3mm for all parameters, click create, and my new document will open. So looking back at my previous document, we can see that I have the pages next to each other. I've done this because I want to look at the letterhead pages side by side at a glance. So for ease of workflow, I like to put my pages next to each other. I'll come over to the Pages panel, I'll click on the right top menu, scroll down, and currently we can see a tick next to Allow Document Pages to Shuffle. I'll click this to remove the tick, then in the Pages panel, I'll click on my second page and just drag it up and next to my first page. When I see a line next to the page, I'll release and that will snap the page next to it. And you will also see this page will be immediately next to the page in the work area. Next, I'll come into the Tools panel, I'll click the Page tool, click on page 2 and just drag it to the right, putting some space between the pages. Great! So now if I press W on the keyboard to toggle between preview and normal mode, we can currently see our bleed line around the outside of the canvas and our margin space around the inside of the canvas. Looking back at my final flyer, if I press W, I can toggle between normal and preview mode. In normal mode, we can see the grid that I have used to structure the flyer content. For this approach, on page 1, I have a single column, and on page 2, I have gone for a 4-column grid to align things horizontally, which will allow me to align things vertically. So now I'm going to come into my InDesign preferences, click on units and increments. I'll set this to millimeters for horizontal and vertical. If you're following along, I suggest you do the same so you can match what I'll be doing next. So back to my new document, I'm going to come over to the Pages panel and double click on the parent page. First, I'm going to set up the baseline grid. To do this, I'll come up to Layout, scroll down and click Create Guides. In the menu, I'll make sure to click to turn on preview. For rows, I'll set the number to 40, and for the gutter, I'll set this to 0. I'll make sure to hit the check mark for Fit Gutters to Margins. I'll click OK, and if I double click on a page in the Pages panel, the grid will be applied to the page. Perfect. Now for this document, I want to set up a different grid structure on the second page. To make this easy, I'll come into the Pages panel, right click on my first parent page and duplicate. I'll double click into my new parent page, come up to Layout, down to Margins and Columns. I'll set the columns to 4 and the gutter to 10. I'll click OK, then double click back onto my second page in the Pages panel. I'll right click on this page, click Apply Parent Pages. In the top drop down, I'll select the second parent, click OK, and now I have the column grid applied. Nice. So once I have my document set up, I can now start thinking about working with visual elements. Now depending on the nature of a design, this can influence whether you start working with type or image. Looking back at the final design, if I toggle off the visibility of the type and images layer, we can see that the overall design is structured in what appears to be a stroke base grid, which is used to compartmentalize all the elements. Also, we have a large visual image on the cover and on the back. So for this approach, I'm going to start with the base grid structure and then work my way upwards. So to kick off any document, I'll always start with my layer structure. I'll come into my layers panel, double click on the current layer, and since I'm starting with my base layer, I'll call this base stroke grid. Now looking back at the final design, you can see that there's quite a distinct style for this. On the cover, the grid comes in from the top and finishes at the bottom with space around. Back in my document, I'll grab the rectangle tool. I'm just going to start outside of my canvas at the top, and I'm going to make sure that I click roughly in the middle of this margin space on the left. I'll click and drag down to the bottom margin, and then drag across and place in the middle of the space on the right. Upon release, I now have a simple box frame, carefully positioned on my page. I'll just come over to the Tools panel, I'll make sure the stroke is selected, and for now I'll just come and set this to black with a stroke size of 0.5. And if I press W on the keyboard to toggle between normal and preview mode, we can see my stroke outline there. Now for this grid, I also want some horizontal lines. So I'll come over and grab the stroke tool from the menu, and I'll just start by clicking and dragging across while holding shift to draw a straight line from one side of my box to the other. Again, I'll make sure the stroke is set to black and with a stroke size of 0.5. With the selection tool, I'll just drag the stroke while holding shift down and place it at the top of the third row from the bottom. Now I'm also going to need another one. So with the selection tool, I'm just going to drag it up while holding Alt plus Shift to make a quick duplicate. And for now, I'll just place this roughly in the middle. So with my base structure sorted on page 1, with the selection tool, I'll select it all and press and hold Alt plus Shift and drag it across from page 1 onto page 2. And make sure to place it in the exact same position. And if I press W on the keyboard to toggle between normal and preview mode, we can see my stroke outlines there. Now for this grid composition on the second page, I'll click my middle stroke, place my mouse cursor in the bottom right and click to rotate while holding shift to snap to 90 degrees, and drag it down to align with the bottom stroke. I'll click the bottom stroke, drag up while holding Alt plus Shift to duplicate, click on the far right and just drag it in. And now we have a horizontal stroke halfway across like so. So this lays down the base grid and the fundamental structure that I'm going to build on top. So now we've defined some properties for these stroke objects, I'm going to make a quick object style. So first I'll select one of the strokes, then I'll jump into my Object Styles panel, click on the top right menu, click New Style. I'll name this Base Stroke, click to Apply Style to Selection and click OK. Then I'll select all the other strokes and apply the Base Stroke object style. So now if at any time after creating these strokes I want to change the size or color, all I will have to do is simply change this one object style and it will change them all automatically. Easy. So next I'm going to bring in some of the image elements. So back to the first page, the main visual element here is going to be a collage motif. Now this collage motif is part of the event brand style. In a previous video, we looked at how to create collage compositions like this. So next I'm going to come into the brand toolkit. With the download folder open, click into folder 4 project, into the design expo folder, click into folder 1 media kit and open the expo brand kit InDesign file. This is a brand kit document that includes all the style references we are going to include in our publication design. If we scroll down, we can see we have links to collage samples. With the selection tool, I'll select a collage thumbnail. Now I'll either come to the links panel and click edit original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail and the document will open in its own tab. So here we have a series of collage samples we worked on in a previous episode. If you have not watched that episode and you're curious to learn how to create digital collages like this, you can jump back to the previous video. Or if not, you can just open this document from the download folder where you can follow along. For the first version of the flyer, I'm going to use the collage sample on the first page. Over in the layers panel, I've organized this document into separate layers to make it easy to work with. In this instance, I'm not taking the type elements. So in the layers panel, I'll make sure to toggle off the visibility of the type layer. And with the selection tool, I'll click and drag over the elements, copy these, come into my flyer, I'll come over to the layers panel, click to add a new layer, I'll call this images, and make sure it's at the top, lock the base grid layer, and paste the collage on top on the first page. I'll be sure to right click to group the items, and for now, I'll press S to activate scale, click and drag from the bottom right up while holding shift to scale the group and place at the bottom. I'm not going to worry too much about the composition of this right now. Right now, I just want this in my document ready to work with later. Now you may notice that upon pasting the image into the document, the colors may look a little desaturated. To resolve this, you can come up to Edit, down to Transparency Blend and set this to RGB. So with the main image placed on the page, I can now look at getting the top image onto the second page. Looking back at the final design, we can see that this takes up just under half of the height of the page. I'll come into the Tools panel and grab the Rectangle tool, and I'll just drag from the top bleed line inside my base grid and drag down to the right inside my stroke. For now, it doesn't have to be specific. I'll draw out the shape like so, and into this frame, I'm going to place an image. So back into the toolkit, if we scroll to the image treatment page, we can see a variety of image samples with particular color treatments applied. For the back cover of the flyer, we are going to use one of these gradient map samples. Now I can either place the image manually into the flyer or copy and paste a sample from this document. Here is a cheeky tip. I'll select the image sample from the brand toolkit, copy and jump back into my flyer doc. I'll paste it into the composition. With the direct selection tool, we can click to select the image inside the frame. Again, I'll copy the image by pressing Command+C on Mac or Control+C on PC. I'll press Escape to deselect, select the image frame and delete. I'll select my new frame on page 2 that I want the image to go inside. I'll come up to Edit, select Paste Into, and the image will appear in the frame. Next, I'll right-click on the frame, down to Fitting. I'll select Fit Frame Proportionally, and that is a really useful technique of getting images from one frame into another. But if you don't have a situation like this, where you're sampling images from other documents, you can just place the image in manually. So I'll click into the image with the direct selection tool and delete the image. With the rectangle selected, I'll press Command+D on Mac or Control+D on PC to place an image. I'll navigate to the download folder, into folder 4 project, into the Design Expo folder, click into folder 1 Media Kit, into the Assets folder, into the Image Treatment folder, into the Gradient Map folder, and open the Design Expo GM Event 003 image. And the image will be placed inside. With the direct selection tool, I can click on the image in the frame, and here we can see the bounding box representing the image inside the frame. I'll click on the middle right anchor, and while holding Shift+Alt, I'll click and drag to scale the image down or up to fit within the frame nicely. Easy. Now, if you're curious to see how this image is made, with the selection tool, I'll select the image frame. I'll either come to the links panel and click Edit Original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail, and the document will open up in Photoshop. If we look in the layers panel, we can see that to create this effect, we have a gradient map layer set on top of a colored image below. And if we toggle off the visibility of the gradient map layer, we can see the original image. For now, I'll close this and come back to the flyer. So the last image on the flyer are the featured speakers. Looking at the final design, there are 4 key speakers. So back into the toolkit, if we scroll down further, we can see a speakers page, which includes a variety of pre-composed graphic compositions of speaker mugshots with shapes behind them. Each one of these samples is a small group of layer elements. In the background, we have a shape with a stroke, and on top is an image of a person's profile cut out. So while holding Shift, I'll select 4 of the speakers, copy and paste them into my new document, press S to activate scale, place my mouse cursor towards the bottom right and drag up while holding Shift to scale them down. And I'll place them over on the right. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about positioning these right now. This will come later. Again, if you're curious about these images, with the direct selection tool, if you click on one of the images and while holding Alt, double click on the image, these will open in Photoshop, where you can see these are just Photoshop documents that have been prepared earlier. Here we have some layers and some adjustment layers and masks to cut them out. So right now we have all the key images in the document and they are fairly loosely placed. Next we can start to work with text, which will then define the space and layout where we can finalize how we place the images. So to make it simple and straightforward, we'll start with the largest piece of text on the first page. This time I'll come into the Design Expo content deck. This is a content deck that has been created to help you follow along with all the tutorials in this course to get hold of all the text. If you want to get hold of this content deck, check the link in the description or click the link in the course PDF. So I'll come to the page for Flyer version 1. I'll select all the text for the header. Into my flyer design, I'll come over to the layers panel, click and add a new layer. I'll name this layer type. I'll make sure this layer is set to the top above the images layer. And for now, I'll lock the images layer as to not accidentally select anything on this layer. I'll come to the tools menu and click on the type tool. On the first page, I'll click and drag a type frame from the top margin across to the right and down around a third of the page, like so, to give myself some space to work with. And I'll paste in the text. Back into the Design Expo brand toolkit, if we scroll to the type format guide page, we can see that for display headers, we want to use Base New Expanded Medium. So I'll select all my text. Up in the control panel, I'll change the font to Base New, click the drop down on the family and select Expanded Medium. I'll set the size to 33 and set the leading to 38. And I'll press Escape to deselect the text and drag down my text frame if I need to. So before we go any further, we can see that there is some hyphenation occurring on my text. I'll double click and select all the text, and down into the paragraph panel, I'll check the box at the bottom to toggle off hyphenation. Easy. So now we've defined some text properties, I'm going to make a quick paragraph style. I'll jump into the paragraph style panel, click on the top right menu, click New Style, and I'll name this Header. click to apply style to selection and click OK. Now when working with type in InDesign, you want to be careful. So I'll come up to type, scroll down and click on show hidden characters. Hidden characters in InDesign are non-printable symbols that represent formatting elements in your text, such as spaces, paragraph breaks, tabs, and line breaks. These characters are essential for understanding the structure and flow of your text, but are invisible by default when working in a document. So right now I can see there is a paragraph break at the end of my text. I don't want this, so I'll place my mouse cursor at the end and press delete to get rid of that. This is just going to clean up my texture. Nice. So looking back at my final design, we can see that we have some additional formatting here. Looking at the brand toolkit, on the sample page, we can see that for headlines used in large format, a 2-font format approach can be used to create additional visual intrigue. This can add emphasis to the second line and add to the distinct visual aesthetic. So the first line is set in expanded medium, and the second line is set in expanded bold, in all caps with a stroke effect applied. So I'll select the second line of text, I'll set the font to expanded bold. In the tools menu, I'll click the swap fill and stroke. This will apply the stroke to the type. I'll hit the all caps button up in the control panel and set the stroke size to 0.5. Now over in the paragraph styles panel, we will now see a plus icon next to the style we just created. What I need to do now is create a new style. What we just did there was simply change the formatting of the characters. So in this instance, we will only need to create a character style. So with the text selected, I'll come into the character styles, create a new style and call this headerline 2. Click to apply style to selection, click OK, press escape to deselect the text, and with the selection tool, I'll click on the frame, double click on the middle bottom anchor point of the bounding box, and this should snap the frame up to fit the text perfectly. So with the headline text in place, that now defines the space in which this is going to take on the page. I'll come to the layers panel and unlock the base layer, click the stroke line below and place it under, allowing for adequate space. And now we are starting to define our composition more decisively. So looking back at the final design, we can see at the bottom we have some text that spans the width of the bottom frame. Back into my document with the type layer selected, with the type tool, I'll click and drag a text frame to span the entire size of the bottom module. In the content doc, I'll select the date and location information, come into my new frame and paste. Now upon pasting the new text into the frame, you may or may not see that the text is particularly large. If you select all the text, make sure there is no paragraph style applied. If so, in the paragraph styles panel, click basic paragraph, and this will take away any styles applied. So right now this is just a text dump from the content deck, but what I want to do here is apply a particular text format. I want this on 2 lines and I want some additional characters. So I'll place my mouse cursor in front of London, I'll press backspace and then enter for a hard return to create a line break. Then I'll bring book now up to the same line as location and place a / between location and book now. I'll place the mouse cursor at the end and press delete a few times to remove the paragraph return. I'll press escape to deselect the type and I'll come up and hit the align center button. I'll click back into the type frame and select all, and up in the control panel I'll click the justify all line button, and that will expand the text across the frame like so. So that's good, but right now the text is butting right up to the left and right side of the base grid. I'll press escape to deselect the text, I'll right click on the frame, come to text frame options, hit the preview button, and for the inset spacing, I'll toggle off the lock icon and add 4 for the left and 4 for the right, click OK, I'll select all the type, set the font to base new expanded medium, I'll hit the all caps button, set the font size to 10, set the leading to 12, with the text selected, I'll come into the character styles, create a new style and call this P1 footer. Click to apply style to selection, click OK, press escape to deselect the text, and that is sitting in the space comfortably just how I want it. So the next piece of text I'm going to get in here is the little label that sits up in the top right corner of the flyer. Looking back at the final design, we can see that this has an interesting highlight effect applied. Now we could create this from scratch, or we could recycle from a previous document. In the previous video, we set up a poster design. In that episode, we learned how to format the text to create this highlight effect and apply a style. One of the awesome things about setting up character and paragraph styles is that these can be copied and pasted from one document to another. So instead of formatting this from scratch, I'm going to copy it. So I'll come back to the event design document we opened earlier. On the marketing collateral page, with the selection tool, I'll select the poster thumbnail. Now I'll either come up to the links panel and click edit original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail, and the document will open up in its own tab. I'll come and select the label in the top right with the highlighted color. I'll copy this, jump back into my flyer document and paste. Now upon pasting, this will be particularly big because we've just pasted from a very large poster design. Also, upon pasting this piece of text into our document, we will also paste in the paragraph style, which we set up previously in the poster. So what I can do here is come and double click into the label paragraph style. I'll change the character size to 10, the leading to 12. I'll come down to underline options, change the weight to 15, the offset to -3, click OK, and we can reduce the size of the text to fit our flyer more appropriately. In normal mode, with the selection tool, I'll double click on the bottom right anchor point to snap the frame up, and I'll place the text nicely in the top right corner of my page in the margin space. Perfect. So that now completes all the main text elements on the first page. Next we can look at sorting the text for the second page. So starting with the header, I've already established this on the cover. So with the selection tool, I'll click and drag this over into the second frame while holding Alt to make a duplicate. In the content deck, I'll select the header for the back page, come into the doc and paste it in. In doing so, the format may be wrong. I'll select all the type and set the paragraph style to header. And now in this instance, the type is too large. So I'll reduce the size to 20 and set the leading to 28 and bring the text frame in to sort out the text ragging like so. Now changing the type format, we've also overwritten that paragraph style. I'll come into the paragraph style panel, click on the top right menu, click new style. I'll name this header back page. Now be careful here to look below at the general setting. It may say based on the header line 1 style. Make sure to set this to none. I'll make sure to click the box to apply style to the selection and click OK. So now we have to find where the stroke line is on the cover page. Now I can adjust the background image frame to reflect this. So I'll click the image behind and adjust the frame to match. Nice. Okay, so let's now move on to the paragraph text. So looking at the file design, we can see that for our block of paragraph text, we lead with a title and then follow with a lighter weight for the body copy. So again, we could either set this up from scratch or copy a sample from some text we have already set up. This is where it can get really fast when using InDesign. It may take a bit of time to set up one format initially, but then once we have it, it can then be easy to duplicate in future. So again, I'll come into the poster design, copy the block of paragraph text, come into my flyer and paste. And just like that, the text is large and the paragraph styles have been copied into the document as well. Now it's just a case of editing the styles to get the size correct for our flyer. So I'll press escape to make sure I deselect the text. In this instance, I'll pay close attention to the paragraph panel. Previously in the poster, I added a right indent to this frame. For now, I want to take this off. So I'll come into the paragraph panel and change it from 30 to 0. I'll click off the frame to deselect. I'll come into the paragraph styles panel. I'll double click on the paragraph title style. I'll set the size to 12, set the leading to 14. I'll also click on the indent and spacing and make sure that the right indent is also set to 0 and click OK. Next, I'll double click on the paragraph style. I'll set the size to 7.5, set the leading to 10. I'll also click on the indent and spacing and make sure that the right indent is also 0 and click OK and drag in the frame. Right now we can see that it's a particularly large gap underneath the title. So I'll double click back into the paragraph title style, click back on the indents and spacing and change the space after from 10 to 3 and click OK. So the formatting that was applied to this text worked really well in large format for a poster, but might not work quite as well for a smaller format here. So this time I'll double click on the paragraph title style, change the font to semi-bold, click OK, double click on the paragraph style, change the font to wide, click OK, and that is looking a little more suitable for the flyer here. Now, when working with paragraph styles, you want to pay very close attention to your hidden characters, as sometimes mistakes and errors can occur. For example, here at the end of the title, we can see the paragraph return is really large compared to the actual title size. This could be from the previous formatting we had, which was applied to the large text. So we need to get rid of this. To resolve this, we can place our mouse cursor before the paragraph below, press delete to pull this up to the end of the first title, then press enter again to add a new hard return, and now we will see that the paragraph return is a lot smaller, matching the text. This is just going to neutralize and clear up your text formatting, ensuring that there is no hidden errors in future. So all that's left to do now is come into the content deck, copy the title and paragraph copy, replace them in the flyer, and if the text exceeds the frame, I'll click to expand the frame down. Easy. So that was a good example of how we can recycle formatted text in InDesign. So looking back at the file design, we can see that below we have a chunk of text that looks very much like the label text on the cover. So with the selection tool, I'll click on the label text on the cover and drag it into the second page while holding Alt to make a duplicate. I'll expand the text frame out, come into the content deck, copy the callout text, back into the document, I'll paste in my text. With it all selected, I'll toggle off hyphenation in the paragraph panel, remove the paragraph return at the end, drag in the frame to adjust the text ragging, double click on the bottom middle anchor point to snap the frame to the text, and position the frame like so within that module. Easy. So looking back at the file designs, we can see that there is some specific type formatting applied to the footer elements. And again, this is the same as what we did in the poster design. So back into the poster design, I'll come down and select the first footer type frame, copy this and paste it into my document on the type layer. Again, this text is large, however the styles will be the same, so all we need to do is just reduce the size of the text. This time I'll press S on the keyboard and click and drag in while holding shift to scale it down and place it in the bottom module like so. I'll select the title text and change the size to 8. Then in the paragraph styles, I'll right click on the style and click redefine style. If the plus icon is still there, I'll click apply style clear overrides for good measure, and that will update the style. I'll select the paragraph text and change the size to 7. And I'll also change the font to regular because right now it's a little too wide. In the paragraph styles, I'll right click on the style and click redefine style. And if the plus icon is still there, I'll right click and apply style and clear overrides. Easy. Next, I want to get my text to sit nicely in the middle of this module. So I'll press escape to deselect the text. With the selection tool, I'll click on the type frame, set it at the top of the module, and click and drag the frame down to the baseline. Then up in the control panel, I'll hit the align center button. So that's my first footer element in the flyer. Looking back at the file design, I need another 2. So with the selection tool, I'll click on my first footer element and drag right while holding Alt to make a quick duplicate. And I'll do the same until I get a third one. And then back into the content doc, I'll just copy the headers for each and replace them. Keep in mind that as you paste in the titles, if the text changes size for whatever reason, just make sure to select the title, come back into the paragraph style, and hit that footer title style to reset it. I'll replace the paragraphs for each, and then I'll have 3 footer elements at the bottom. And for now, I'm just going to leave them where they are. Okay, so moving on to the speakers, with the selection tool, I'll just click and drag the paragraph text from the left to the right while holding Alt plus Shift to duplicate across in a straight line. I can remove the paragraph text and replace the header with featured speakers. So that easily sorts the title there. And for the text under each mugshot, the formatting is going to be similar to the footer. So with the selection tool, I'll click and drag on a footer element up while holding Alt to make a quick duplicate, and I'll place it under the first speaker. With the text frame selected, I'll come up to the control panel and set the alignment to the top. I'll click on the title copy, I'll toggle off the all caps button, I'll come into the copy deck, copy the name and replace it. Again, if the text changes in size for whatever reason, just hit that footer title style to reset it. And in this instance, I'll set the font to semi-bold instead of bold, copy the paragraph element, replace this. Right now the text is just a little too big for that space, so I'll select the text below, set the size to 5.5, and then I'll bring in the text frame. So this now creates a completely different set of type formatting applied to this. So I'll create some new styles here. I'll select the title into my paragraph styles panel, click on the top right menu, click new style. I'll name this profile title. Be careful here to look below at the general setting. It may say based on footer header. Make sure this is set to none. Make sure to apply style to the selection and click OK. I'll select the paragraph type below into my paragraph styles panel. Click on the top right menu, click new style. I'll name this profile paragraph. Make sure based on is set to none. make sure to apply style to the selection, click OK, and press escape to deselect the text. So now we have the type for the profile header. I can simply duplicate these across under each image, come into the content deck and simply replace the name and profile information, and now we have the information for the key speakers included. Nice. Okay, so looking back at the file design, on the back we have the registered today label repeated. So this is just a case of clicking and dragging it from page 1 to page 2 while holding Alt to make a quick duplicate, and I'll position it under my header. And the last piece of text is the stroke date that comes in from the top. I'll create the text frame in the pasteboard area, type in 2025, change the font to 40, increase the tracking to 40, set the font to base new expanded bold. With the type selected, I'll hit the fill and stroke in the tools panel to apply a stroke. I'll press escape to deselect the type, double click on the bottom right anchor to snap the box to fit the type, place my mouse cursor in the bottom right, click and drag to rotate while holding shift to snap to 90 degrees, and drag my type up to the top of the page slightly cropped off. Up in the top left of the control panel, I'll click on the top left square to redefine the reference point, press S on the keyboard and click and drag while holding shift to scale up the text, position on the right of the margin line, double click into the type and set the stroke to 0.5, and that will now complete all the type elements in my flyer. Perfect. So at this point, when all the text is in the document, I then like to start thinking about color. Looking back at my file design, you can see the color approach I took. So if we look in the swatches panel, we can see that we have all our brand colors present. When we pasted the collage elements and the speaker images into the flyer earlier, it also carried across the swatches. In the swatches panel, we can now see all the colors that we can use, but we will need to be careful. Here we can also see some duplicates, which can happen when you paste in elements with the same color multiple times. Here I'll come and select on a duplicate, right click, select delete and replace it with an existing color. Once I have all my brand colors together, I can click on the top one, press and hold shift, select the bottom, click the folder icon to set these into their own folder group, and I'll name the folder Design Expo Palette. Nice. Now I could come and select the text elements and the stroke elements and change the colors individually, but now I've created some styles, it'll be easier to do it this way. So I'll come into the paragraph styles panel and start from the top. I'll make my way down, clicking on each of the styles and set the color of the type to midnight. Next, I'll come into the character styles panel, and for header line 2, instead of setting the fill color, I'll set the stroke color to Ultravio. Once done, I'll press W to enter into preview mode, and we will see the type has changed. Now another detail we can address is the label. Right now this is set to Solaro. For this flyer, I want to change this. I'll double click on the label paragraph style, and for the underline option, I'll set the color to Lumo. Change the tint to 20%, click OK, and now that's the color applied to all the type elements. Next, I'll come into the Object Styles panel, double click on the base stroke style, and change the stroke color to Ultravio. Now looking back at the file design, we can see that for part of the design, we have solid blocks of color behind some of the text. So on the first page, on the base layer, I'll grab the frame tool and drag a frame to the size of the module at the bottom, and I'll set the fill color to Solaro. Right click, down to arrange and send it to back. Now for the footer section on page 2, I need 3 blocks of color. With the selection tool, I'll duplicate my yellow box across while holding Alt plus Shift to duplicate in a straight line. Then I'll just drag in a little so it's quite small. With the selection tool, I'll click and drag while holding Alt and Shift to duplicate the box, and I'll make sure to place the box directly next to the first one. And for this box, I'll change the color to Lumo. With the selection tool, I'll click and drag again while holding Alt and Shift to duplicate another box, and I'll make sure to place this box exactly next to the first one, and for this box, I'll change the color to Fluoro. With the 3 boxes created, I'll select them all and drag them right to expand the 3 boxes to fill the module space at the bottom, and now that defines the space in which I want to place my footer elements. So now I can lock the base grid and the images layer and unlock the type layer. I can select my first footer element and drag the text frame to the approximate size of the box below. I'll do this for the second footer element and the third element. By holding Shift, I'll select all 3 type boxes at the bottom. I'll right click and select text frame options. I'll click the lock icon to unlock, and I'll come and add a left indent space of 3. Click OK, and now we have those footer elements sitting perfectly on top of the color blocks below. Excellent. So now everything is in the document, all the text is defined, everything is as it should be. What I can do now is just take a couple of minutes to go around the layout and fine tune some of the details. The first thing I'll do is come back to page 1, and now I have the clear space below my text. I can just edit my collage composition. I can click into all the elements and change the size and scale to fit this graphic collage into the module space more comfortably. And I can also add a white circle onto the base circle background. I'll come to the speakers and I'll just reposition the text and the images inside, scaling up appropriately just to make them fit inside. And as another small detail, I'll add some small strokes to help reinforce the structure, and I'll create new object styles for these. So there is one last element I want to bring into this flyer design, and that is a QR code. And I'm going to place this in a colored box as part of the collage. Again, I can grab this from the brand toolkit, place it into the cover, create a colored box, place it on top, and scale and position like so. And that completes the layout of my first flyer. Now, the true power of InDesign allows us to create and manage multiple content in one document. What I'll do to finish off this tutorial is show you how you can duplicate a layout and make modifications easily. So once you're happy with one layout, it's very easy to duplicate. I come into the Pages panel, click the first page, press and hold Shift and click the next page, right click and duplicate the spread. Looking back at the file designs, we can see that the second version includes a different header and collage image. So in this instance, I'll unlock the image layers, I'll delete the collage, I'll open the collage document, copy and paste in a new collage and reposition and scale. I'll come into the content deck for flyer version 2, copy all the text and replace all the text in the second spread. In this instance, I might have to come and tweak some of the text to refine the text ragging. Here I can add line breaks where necessary. And just like that, we now have 2 versions of a flyer. Using this process, we could make as many versions as we like. Awesome. So before we close off this tutorial, there is one last thing that is quite important to keep in mind, and that is style management. In this video, we created various styles for various text formatting, and we also pasted in some styles from other documents. If we look in the paragraph styles panel, right now we can see that we have a number of styles building up here. Now we could just leave it as is and move on, but if we want to be really organized, we can manage these styles. Earlier in the course, when we focused on paragraph and character styles, we talked about organizing our styles into folders. This can just make the whole process and workflow of using InDesign and styles easier. Also, when we come to build more documents in future, it'll be good to have our styles organized so we can refer back to them or even use them in other documents. In this video, we copied styles from another document, so we've already got some folders present here. What we're going to do now is just manage these and clean it all up. Here I'll drag all the header styles into the header and titles folder and order from top to bottom like so. I'll make sure all my paragraph styles are in the paragraph folder. I'll create a new folder in the character styles panel. I'll call this headers and titles and drag in my header style. Into the object styles panel, I'll create a new folder called strokes, drag in my stroke styles, and here we're creating a clear and organized hierarchy of our styles. So once you're happy with your design and you want to export ready for print, you can either export the entire document or you can export individual pages. For this example, I just want to export the second flyer. So when you're ready to export, simply come to File and click on Export, or press Command plus E on Mac or Control plus E on PC. I'll navigate to the project folder I saved previously in the course, click into the Publish folder, select the PDFs folder. I'll name the file Design Expo Flyer 2, and down in the format, I'll choose Adobe PDF for print. I'll click Save and up will pop another menu. Here, I'm going to make sure that for Adobe PDF preset, High Quality Print is selected. For pages, I'll select Range and type 3-4. I'll make sure Pages is selected. I'll make sure that View PDF after saving is checked. I'll come over to the left and click Marks and Bleeds and click only on crop marks. For bleed, I'll set this to use document bleed settings and then click Export. InDesign will do its thing and up will pop Acrobat Reader. If I zoom out a little and click the Pages tab, here we can see we have a PDF doc with 2 pages, front and back. Around the outside, we can see the trim marks, and this is where the printer will trim the flyer after printing to ensure a clean cut. This is now good to send off to the printer. Perfect. So that's how you can create a flyer design in Adobe InDesign, incorporate and manage styles, and easily duplicate your artwork. Now, another common document used when marketing an event is a billboard. Over the past few videos, we have looked at how to create layout design for small collateral. In the next video, we are going to look at how to create design for an ultra large format. In the next video, we are going to look at how we can create a billboard design in InDesign. So see you in the next video.